Pierre Gasly was one of the most dissatisfied drivers on the grid, mostly because he came off a strong 2020 and 2021 season, only to be consistently outside the points in 2022. Nobody could have predicted the massive drop in performance of AlphaTauri, but now that the Frenchman has left the toxic environment of the Italian team and is poised to have a stronger season in Alpine, he didn't hold back words when explaining the 2022 season. Gasly has been part of Toro Rosso, which was the name of the team prior to its rebranding to AlphaTauri in 2020, since 2017, and just 2 years later, he got the opportunity to perform in the senior team of Red Bull. However, whether it was the pressure of competing in a top-tier team or the fact that he had Verstappen as a teammate, Gasly's performance was dismal. In fact, it was so bad that he only lasted 13 races. And with Verstappen actually overlapping Gasly for one lap at Budapest, the team thought that the Frenchman did not have the potential they actually believed he would have. But just 1 year later, Gasly showed that 13 races aren't enough for the team to judge his potential, and in 2020 he won his first race in Monza and had a couple of podiums as well in the following period. He was the driving force behind AlphaTauri's P7 and P6 finishes in 2020 and 2021 respectively, so one should be very surprised to see Gasly's sudden drop in performance in 2022. The Frenchman was frequently out of Q1 and wasn't able to find pace the following day and obtain some strong points, which was pointing towards one thing: Gasly leaving the team. Now that Perez had secured his seat at Red Bull for 2 more years, until the end of 2024 season, it was clear to Gasly that if he wanted to score podiums or strong points finishes, he would have to look for another environment, one that would give him equal opportunities as his teammate. And luckily for him, a spot in Alpine opened. But before we go into what he has to say about reuniting with his old nemesis, Esteban Ocon, let's see what he has to say regarding the 2022 season of AlphaTauri. Similar to us, casual F1 fans, Gasly also expected that the performance of the Italian team was supposed to be much stronger prior to the beginning of the season. On top of that, when you see how Red Bull performed and dominated the entirety of the grid, you'd think that AlphaTauri would snatch a bit from that performance and be able to finish in the points constantly, if not for other things. After sharing the P8 spot with Haas in the Constructors' Championship at the end of the season, Gasly felt it was difficult to really quantify how much progress he'd made through such a difficult season. Further adding, from my side, what I can feel, it's more the fact of working and trying to maximize a car which didn't have the same potential as 2021, Gasly told Motorsport.com in an end-of-season interview. It's not easy also trying to keep the motivation in the engineering room, with the guys trying to keep the focus of everyone to minimize the mistakes. Because at the end, even if you do the same sport and the same season, the dynamic is quite different. Especially last year was amazing for everyone, and we had the most successful year. There was quite a lot of expectations from this year, and it's fair to say we've been quite far away from what we had expected or what we had wished for. If you want to know how difficult Gasly's season was, just look at the fact that this was the second time in his career that he's gone without a podium since he made his F1 debut. The Frenchman's best result was a 5th place finish in Azerbaijan, where he finished on the podium with Perez and Vettel last year. Gasly will now replace Alonso in Alpine, following Piastri's denial of a guaranteed seat in a team that is currently regarded as the best of the rest, and Alonso's abrupt switch to Aston Martin. Whether Gasly will have success on a team that achieved its dream of completing an all-French lineup with Gasly and Ocon, time will tell. But what is more than certain is that Gasly didn't enjoy the last season in AlphaTauri, something that he spoke about further in his interview. When he was asked about whether this was the toughest season with AlphaTauri, Gasly added, "In a way, probably yes. Considering that I have more experience and I have experienced good and less good times, more or less success with the team. This year, with the change of regulations, unfortunately we didn't manage to capitalize on this opportunity. There were for sure some difficulties from it, but I think some other teams, in fairness, did a better job than we did. We didn't really get our opportunities from this change." So what is next for Gasly? Obviously, the tenure in AlphaTauri is one that he'd like to forget quickly, and now that he has been presented with the challenge to perform in a team that could be able to score podiums in the future, we're going to witness a performance that's going to be well under pressure. Not only will Gasly have to overcome the challenge of performing on a team like Alpine, but he'll also have to accommodate himself with Esteban Ocon, an old childhood friend of his who isn't currently in the best possible relationship with Gasly. Both of these had a long-standing beef from their karting days, and throughout the season they constantly added that they weren't the best of buddies. But making statements when you aren't a teammate versus making statements when you are a teammate are two different things, and that is something both Gasly and Ocon know very well. That is why they're looking forward to burying the hatchet and making things work to perfection. And if not, Rossi, the CEO of Alpine, is here to make sure that everything will happen smoothly and without any visible problems. The first step that Alpine took was to prohibit the presence of both families at the same race weekends in order to avoid awkward situations and potential conflicts. Apart from Gasly and Ocon, their families are also not in a good relationship, and that's something that Alpine knows better than anyone else. Also, Alpine is the team that will suffer the most from their out-of-track rivalry, which is why they're taking all the actions needed in order to prevent situations escalating on the grid. Rossi spoke about the situation, further adding, "If any problems come up, they will be the losers, because everyone expects that and many think they're big kids. There, they can show that they have transformed into mature leaders. At the end of the contract, they will approach 30. They must not mess up, because it is dangerous to find yourself pushed out of a team because you haven't shown sufficient maturity." Both are aware of this, and they have affirmed it to me individually and together. And based on the statements made by Gasly and Ocon, you'd think that both of them have enough maturity to overcome this situation and make their working relationship a paradise. Now that the team has achieved what they've been wanting to achieve for such a long time, it would be a shame to throw it all away just because you had scuffles when you were kids. And Gasly, for one, knows that for you to be presented with the challenge of performing on a top-notch team, you need to know your worth, but also be humble and not be above the team. The question of whether Alpine will prefer Ocon more than Gasly remains, as we've seen that he's been the clear number one option for them when he raced against Alonso. That is why Gasly needs to be a bit careful, because we saw in 2022 that when Alonso was much faster than Ocon, the Frenchman didn't give up easily and always gave the Spaniard a hard time in passing him, which was eventually bad for the team because they lost a lot of time on the track. When talking about his future relationship with Ocon, Gasly added, "Esteban is the guy I know in the paddock for the longest. We met at 6 years old, 20 years ago, and have a long past history. I will say he's done quite a lot since we both made it to F1, achieved one of our dreams, got our opportunities here in the paddock, and we both want to win and fight for championships." With that being said, it's evident that Gasly and Alpine will have a very interesting season ahead of them. Whether it will be a successful one, or there will be lots of conflicts and swearing in full French, time will tell. But as of now, the energy and the vibes that we're receiving from both of these drivers are positive. What do you think about the potential relationship between Gasly and Ocon? Let us know in the comments below.